I'm learning about Sundar Singh, who is a world-famous example of how God's life can be present in a human being. He was very famous in the early part of the 20th century, so famous that he did a world tour back then when they didn't have airplanes, and he went all over Europe and spoke, and he went all over the United States, and he went to Australia and Hawaii and places in Asia. But he's from northern India, came out of a Sikh family, high caste Sikh family, was antagonistic towards Christianity, even burnt a New Testament at one point. But God got a hold of him in a very dramatic way, just very direct experiences with him. And then he became an evangelist, particularly in northern India, and would walk barefoot to places and preach to Indians, would dress like the Indian sadhu, which is the word for a holy man, didn't put on sort of Anglican robes and traditional kind of Western religious attire. And he was a very important example for people in the early 20th century for mysticism, that is direct relationship with God, as well as miracles that God still does act in the world today. And all that he did would have been impossible if he didn't believe that God was here in this room. Hey everybody, welcome to the Sanctus Forum. I am Michael Stewart Robb. I'm better known as Mike. My friends call me Mike. Everybody but my mother calls me Mike. And this is a part of Conspiracy Commentaries. We're talking about Dallas Willard's The Divine Conspiracy, just one section at a time. And just want to take this moment this isn't staying together, to invite you to subscribe to not only this channel, but to the Sanctus Institute newsletter, which you can find over at Sanctus Institute. We really don't send a lot of things. I don't know if that'll ever change, but at the moment, it's pretty rare, which means you'll have to look for them. They end up in your spam folder or things like that. But it's a really good way to especially pray for us, and we need a lot of prayer over here in Europe for what we do. Now, as for this section, which is called The Experience Continues Today, we've been talking about this for a while, and just the first little phrase here reminds us of what we've been talking about. Experiences of God in space around us, right? We've been talking about it in the Bible, and now Dallas Willard wants to say that this is something that happens today and has happened in church history for 2,000 years. Special experiences with God. I just want to cross-reference for you page 320, where Dallas is talking about the primary objectives of the church. And he says that 4 things shouldn't be primary objectives, and one of that is seeking out of special states of mind or ecstatic experiences, which he later calls special experiences. Now, we're talking about them, but this really shouldn't be a primary objective of the church. And so keep that in mind, that what we're talking about here are things that happen, but they really shouldn't be things that we are directing all of our activities towards having. And another thing that you should cross-reference is, if you have a copy of Dallas Willard's Hearing God, in chapter 3, let's see here, in a section called Sensing God's Presence, you'll find that he's talking about the exact same phenomena. He's talking about the exact same phenomena of experiencing God's presence where you are. So just kind of keep these in mind. Dallas has a very sort of kind of structure in mind, and we're not quite talking about God speaking to you, which is what hearing God is about, but just keep in mind the connections. Now, here's what I want to say to you today. Don't worry if you haven't had these kinds of experiences. Don't worry about it, okay? It's not what the Christian life is about. So cool off. It's okay. On the other hand, if you have had these kinds of experiences, don't feel like you're a special kind of Christian, okay? Don't feel like you have to become a pastor or something like that. Indeed, You may be a special kind of Christian, but not in the way in which you're thinking. It may be that you have these kinds of experiences because you're like those kids that need the after-school tutoring. The regular curriculum isn't quite enough for you, and so you need an extra experience with God in order to have it come home. So don't worry if you don't have them, and don't get too puffed up about it if you have had these kinds of experiences. And Dallas makes a very important point here when he's trying to explain that this isn't really what the Christian life is about. He says, the most important things in our human lives are nearly always things that are invisible. And so don't feel like you have to move from visions of God to visions of God. Most of the time, God's going to be invisible in your life. Now, what Dallas is trying to say about these experiences of God, like the ones with Sundar Singh, is he's trying to say that this is a way of God teaching us that he is there in the air that surrounds us. These experiences teach us that he is there. Look at this sentence. Yet God does show himself from time to time in the space of those who seek him. Okay, this is for me on page 73. It's the third to last paragraph. And then he says, and over time he leaves among his people visible reminders of his constant, though invisible presence. Visible reminders of his constant presence. So that strikes me as something different from these experiences of showing himself to people, having visible reminders of his constant, though invisible, presence. And those are the sorts of things that we should be more attentive to. The whole point is God is here. He's here in this room. He's there wherever you are, in whatever rooms you inhabit, whether you're sitting in the garden, whether you're on public transportation, whatever it is, God's there too. Would you like to be like Sundar Singh? I mean, I don't mean that you're going to be barefoot and you're going to have miracles and you're going to become an itinerant evangelist. I mean, would you like to be an example of a person with whom God's presence is very real? And if you would like to be that person, whatever it is, whatever vocation that you are in, then you have to seek God in the places that you inhabit, in the rooms that you sit in, and in the streets that you walk. That's the secret. That's what Sundar Singh did, and that's what we can all do. Well, that's it for today. I'll see you another time. Bye.